Wells of Silence by TheBeckster, Chapter 22. Anakin hurried down the familiar path from the Senate's speeder bay to the Chancellor's offices. She kept her head bowed and her hood up, wanting to avoid any unwanted attention. She didn't want to be here, but the Chancellor had asked to see her specifically, and she couldn't say no. She couldn't begin to imagine what this was about. It couldn't be Jedi business anymore. And she had no insight on the war either. She had been keeping tabs on things as best she could, but without her privileges at the temple and her absence from the Chancellor's office, the best she could get were reports from Padme, or even worse, watered-down Holonet stories. She had tried getting information from Obi-Wan during his visits, but he was keeping mostly mum on the subject. She was no longer a Jedi or a general, so there were things he couldn't tell her, and she sensed that when he came to visit the twins, he just wanted to spend a couple brief hours pretending there wasn't a war. She couldn't fault him for that. What she had picked up was that in the 3 weeks since Dooku's death, the Separatists had crawled back into whichever dark corners of the galaxy they came from. There were still countless skirmishes in the Outer Rim. More troops and Jedi were being sent out every day, but Grievous hadn't shown his face once since then, and the Separatist leaders kept getting shuffled from one hole to another. In fact, Obi-Wan had been sent out just this morning to follow a lead that might lead to Grievous. He thought it was probably just another wild bantha chase, but either way, it was a good sign. The war was turning. The Republic was winning. It would all be over soon. Still, none of that offered any clue as to what the Chancellor would want to see her for. She really hadn't seen Palpatine since the day she rescued him. He had been the one to tell her to go home and spend time with her family and not worry about the war politics. And now he was calling her back only 3 weeks later? She doubted this was going to be an unpleasant conversation, but she still didn't like being away from her children. She was ushered in immediately by Mas Ameda and found the Chancellor in his red office. She couldn't help but shiver slightly. The cold air must have been blowing strongly to combat the heat of the sun. It had been a rather warm day. Palpatine rose to greet her. "Anakin, my dear, come in. Please, sit down." He gestured to the couches. Anakin took a seat and he sat opposite of her. "How have you been, my dear? You look tired." Anakin smirked. "I have 2 newborns. I don't sleep much." Palpatine smiled back warmly. "No, I'm sure you don't. Are your children well?" "Healthy. Perfect. Growing every day." Anakin knew she had a bit of a stupid smile on her face, but she couldn't help it. "That's wonderful to hear. What did you call me here for, Chancellor?" Anakin wanted to move this conversation along quickly. Already she could feel her anxiety building. "Well, actually, I wanted to discuss your future." Anakin's smile fell a little bit. "All due respect, Chancellor, but I was really looking forward to spending some time with my family. The twins are only a month old." "Oh, my dear, I am not suggesting you go back to work immediately." Palpatine chuckled warmly. "You deserve to spend as much time with your family as you need. I know you no longer have any Jedi duties to attend to." Anakin stiffened. "You know? It may not be public knowledge, but I have my sources, Anakin." Palpatine fixed her with a gentle smile. "You needn't to worry, though. When you are ready, simply come to me, my dear. You are far too skillful for me to let slip through my fingers." He chuckled softly. If a military career sounds appealing, I'm certain I can reinstate you as an admiral, or even higher if your ambitions reach that far." Anakin swallowed nervously. She didn't want to outright reject the offer, but at the moment, being anything other than a mother was the farthest thing from her mind. Can I think on the offer? Of course, Anakin. There's certainly no timetable for this. I just wanted to plant that idea in your mind for when you are ready to think on it. A silence fell between the two. Anakin had a feeling that this wasn't the only reason Palpatine had asked to speak to her. But she didn't know what else to say to prompt further conversation. Have you been sleeping well, Anakin? Palpatine was studying her carefully. You seem more tired than simply having 2 newborns to take care of. Anakin swallowed the nervous fear that was quick to rise up. She really hadn't been sleeping well. Her visions kept coming more frequently, and they were getting stronger. She had hoped they would stop after she gave birth, but they had only gotten worse. I'm still having nightmares. Your visions? She nodded silently in response. Palpatine's voice turned to his teacher's voice. Have you seen any greater details? No, I've even tried meditating on them. Have you tried other means of meditation? Or just the ways the Jedi taught you? Other ways? Anakin furrowed her brow. What was Palpatine getting at? Have you tried tapping into the power of the dark side? No, of course not. Why are you even asking me this? What would the Chancellor even know of such a things? Palpatine fixed her with a gentle, admonishing look. Anakin, if you haven't sensed it by now, you're more exhausted than I thought. Anakin paused and focused. The chill she was feeling wasn't the air conditioning. It was the Force. It was the Chancellor. She jumped from her chair and moved several steps away from Palpatine. Unconsciously, her lightsaber found its way into her hand, and she ignited it. You're Thith. You're the Sith Lord. Palpatine didn't deny it. Instead, he rose to his feet, slowly, unthreateningly. He never broke eye contact with Anakin. Will you strike me down? I won't stop you. Anakin's hands shook. I should. Why? You're evil. Palpatine raised an eyebrow at her. Am I? According to whom? The Jedi? You and I both know they are not infallible. Did they not ask you to spy on me? You knew? My dear, of course I did. Their lack of protestations when I suggested you become my liaison was all the confirmation I needed. I knew they distrusted our friendship, but they would seek to exploit it any way they could. Undoubtedly, they hoped that I would let something damning slip, which would give them all the evidence they needed to overthrow me. Anakin shook her head, as if trying to shake off his words. He had yet to raise his voice, or even break out of his calm teaching voice. She had only been given that position because she was pregnant. Convenient, and there was nothing else she could do. Then again, they had told her that very same morning that they knew the Chancellor trusted her, and they wanted her to report on any suspicious activities. Was the Council hoping to exploit her friendship with the Chancellor? No, she knew that the Council had asked of her from the beginning. She hadn't been manipulated. Anakin growled and closed the distance between them, grabbing Palpatine by the collar with one hand and leveling her lightsaber blade against his neck. Still, his expression did not change. You're a criminal, a murderer. You are responsible for the war. Ah, yes, there is that. Palpatine looked away from her. Anakin swore she saw regret flash in his eyes. War was inevitable. I had admittedly misguided hopes that if I infiltrated as a Sith Lord, I would be able to control the Separatists and win the war in favor of the Republic. I will admit, it was a bit beyond my reach, and some things did get out of control. Some things? Anakin spat, releasing Palpatine. Innocent people died. My friends died. Her immediate anger was fading. He was confessing to her, and she had to keep him talking. She disabled her lightsaber, but kept it in hand. Casualties are a part of war, Anakin. Palpatine took a moment to straighten his clothes. I was not counting on Dooku being so insubordinate, nor the other Separatist generals being so independent. There were many who wouldn't make a move until I said so, but plenty of others who had a certain disregard for protocol. More often than not, they were responsible for this regrettable elongation of the war. Your kidnapping, Anakin said incredulously, still not quite believing what she was hearing. You orchestrated it. To draw both Dooku and Grievous to Coruscant, they would have gladly walked themselves into the end of the war at my command. Well, Grievous would have. He did not know my true identity. Only Count Dooku did. You had me kill him, she stated hollowly. His role was finished. I was tired of his insubordination, Palpatine said flippantly, as if he was discussing firing an intern, not killing a man. But that is unimportant now. What matters is that I can help you, Anakin. I can teach you about a whole side of the Force that you have yet to fully explore. You will have unimaginable power. Only I can teach you. Anakin still glowered at him. And what's to stop me from going directly to the Jedi and turning you in? Only your curiosity. Palpatine paced away from Anakin and toward the window. He looked out over the city. Anakin, you were never meant to be an ordinary Jedi. I saw that the first time I met you. You will stagnate yourself if you don't allow me to teach you. It's against the Jedi Code, Anakin insisted, more trying to convince herself to run to the temple than trying to change Palpatine's mind. Palpatine turned to her and gave her a steady look. You said it yourself, my dear. You're no longer a Jedi. Why should you continue to enslave yourself to their close-minded, limited views? Anakin studied her boots. He wasn't wrong. She wasn't a Jedi. She wasn't subject to their rules anymore. Open yourself to the dark side of the Force. Feel its power. Anakin hesitated and shook her head. It's wrong, she protested weakly. Wrong? Palpatine chuckled warmly. My dear, that power is what has kept you alive all these years. You have always drawn on your passion for strength. How is that wrong? He wasn't wrong. In all of her most threatening situations over the war, it hadn't been her cool, calm rationality that got her friends, and troops out with their lives. Why should she continue denying such a natural part of her? The power of the dark side can give you a strength you never knew. Power you had only dreamed of. Knowledge and clarity that even the wisest Jedi could only hope to attain. knowledge, clarity, something Anakin had vainly sought out for 6 months. If she could see her visions clearly, watch their entirety, she could protect her family. She could stop whatever was going to happen. Anakin took a deep breath and let her inhibitions fall. She gave up on what she had been taught was the Jedi way, what she had always struggled to understand. She no longer had to pretend to be emotionless, cold, distant, unfeeling. It felt invigorating, freeing. The Force flooded her with a power she had only felt a few fleeting times before. But it didn't burn out quickly, rather it seemed to feed and grow. Anakin felt like she could single-handedly bring peace to the galaxy. Even the cold fear constantly gripping her heart was melted away. Then a vision hit her, stronger, clearer than any had ever been before. Padme is at home, playing with the twins in the living room. Suddenly, several cloaked figures run into the room, unnaturally swift, on feet, lightened by the Force. She recognizes every Jedi in the room. Before Padme can even move, he is gripped by Plo Koon and pulled off the floor. Quinlan Voss and Kit Fisto each snatch up a twin. "What's going on? Why are you doing this?" Padme shouts, struggling to break free. Mace Windu steps forward, fixing Padme with a cold, hard stare. "The Senator first," he orders Plo Koon. Without hesitance or any sign of remorse, Plo activates his lightsaber straight through Padme's heart. Her husband crumples to the floor, an agonized look of betrayal on his face. Windu doesn't even blink. He turns to the twins. "Do it." Anakin's children feel pain for the first and only time as they are executed. Anakin felt her knees hit the floor. A scream ripped through her throat. Pieces of the Chancellor's office shattered, but she couldn't control it. She couldn't see anything but the dead bodies of her children and her husband on the floor of their home, executed by the Jedi. All she can see is charred, red burns, and the blue and green flash of lightsaber blades. All she can feel is despair. She clawed at her face, trying to dig out the vision, trying to press it away, but this one won't fade. It never will. Someone reached out for her, pulling her hand away, calling her name gently. She looked up and saw a calm, dark void kneeling before her, reaching out to her. "That's right, my dear. Listen to me. Come back." Anakin blinked rapidly and focused on the voice. Her vision cleared, and she realized she was still in the Chancellor's office. Palpatine knelt in front of her. He was speaking to her, one hand on her shoulder, the other pulling her shaking hands away. Anakin gasped for breath, her throat stinging. I saw..." "You don't have to say, Anakin. I saw it too." Anakin drew her hands back and pressed the heels of her palms to her eyes. She drew a long, shaken breath. "The Jedi. All this time I've been seeing the Jedi killing them. Why?" She sobbed and sat back on her heels. Palpatine said nothing and stood up. Rage coursed through her. Those traitorous, murderous, hypocritical bastards. Why? Palpatine fixed her with a steady look. "Do you know why the Jedi forbid attachments, relationships, and having children?" Anakin shook her head. She had asked those questions as a Padawan, of course, but she always got some vague, mystic answers from the masters. Eventually, she gave up asking. It didn't used to be that way. At the dawn of the Jedi Order, they lacked such strict rules. They encouraged love and families. But strong Force wielders bred stronger Force wielders. As time passed, incredibly powerful, dynasties arose. Some individuals may have even been stronger than you, Anakin, and a great imbalance befell the galaxy. There was a terrible war. Sith and Jedi turned on their own kind. Millions of Force wielders were killed in the name of order and balance. The survivors decreed that the Jedi could not repeat their mistakes. New laws were enforced. Anakin's whole body trembled with rage. And my children? The Order does not break a tradition. You know this. Look how quick they were to cast you out when all you did was fall in love. They will come for your children soon. They will try and use the chaos of the ending war to cover up their crimes. You know as well as I do that to save your children, the Jedi must come to an end. Let me teach you, Anakin. Let me help you. Anakin looked up into Palpatine's eyes. They had turned a sickly yellow, and she couldn't be sure if it was just a trick of the light or his Sith powers. This wasn't her friend and mentor looking down at her anymore. He had shown her his true self and offered his help. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine would not have the power to save her family. The Sith Lord Darth Sidious did. He was right. The Jedi had to end for her family's sake. I will do whatever you tell me to, my master. I have to save them. She lowered her eyes respectfully, bowing to her new master. Good, good. Henceforth, you shall be known as... Palpatine paused for a moment, searchingly. Darth Vader. Anakin bowed her head even lower. Thank you, master. Now rise, Lord Vader. We have much to discuss. Anakin got to her feet, and Sidious regarded her on an equal level. He then walked behind his desk and gestured Anakin to take her seat at his right-hand side. Are your children safe, Anakin? They're with Padme at home. His security staff is always on alert. Excellent. They should be plenty safe there. 1,000 flurrying thoughts began consuming Anakin's mind. Perhaps she'd finally get some straight answers from her new master. Why would the Jedi kill my children? Sidious watched her with an open and neutral expression. Your children are incredibly strong with the Force, Anakin. I know you've sensed it already. Then why kill them? I have foreseen your children's future, the Jedi as well. Those two together will have the power to unite the entire galaxy to a single cause. The Jedi fear such power, knowing they couldn't fully control it. If they took your children, it would only be a matter of time before you retrieved them. Now, they can't have that come into fruition. Sidious paused and scoffed. Such foolishness of the Jedi, to fear power. They fear the power your children will have, yes, but more so. They fear losing the power they have accumulated over their reign. They treat power like a dangerous bomb rather than a useful tool. Have you not felt the same, my apprentice? She had, particularly when it came to the war, to the way the Jedi conducted themselves during the war. They had the power, and yet they never used it to its full potential, and now her children would be treated the same way. They wouldn't be children to the Jedi. They were weapons, unstable and dangerous if they couldn't be controlled. Therefore, they had to be destroyed. Anakin clenched her fist so hard she felt the metal of her right hand creak and strain. What if I can't save them? She asked quietly. the icy fear of doubt gripping her heart again. I know of an old Sith legend. It tells of a Sith Lord who was so powerful in the Force that he could bend the midichlorians to his will and influence them to create life or prevent death. You and I together would be more than powerful enough to save your family from any fate. Anakin met her master's eyes, a sickly, desperate hope gripping her heart. Do you know how to perform it? Unfortunately, no. Sidious looked out the window toward the temple. The Sith Lord preserved his knowledge in a holocron, but it was seized by the Jedi. So it's lost, Anakin cried. The holocron vaults were locked. Only council members could access them. They had numerous fail-safes to ensure that breaking in and getting out was impossible. Many more had been added after Cad Bane's theft, several of which she had helped create. It was impenetrable if one didn't want to spend months drilling through with a delicate plasma blade. Palpatine half smiled at her. Not entirely. It is true that we do not have the knowledge on hand, but we have time to seize it. The Council will not move against your family until the final hours of the war. Only after the Jedi have returned to Coruscant. Right now, the temple is sparsely populated. It is not, is it not? You can easily take the temple. We would have abundant time to retrieve what we need. I'll never be able to take over the entire temple by myself, much less hold it long enough to break into the vaults. Palpatine's smile evolved into a cryptic smirk. You won't be alone. End of chapter.